Good afternoon. I'm Makia Moody with Piana Consulting, and today we are going to have a conversation with my esteemed colleagues about how they've navigated working from home, given that that's the new normal. At Piana Consulting, we've been working remotely since our founding in 1998. So during this conversation, it's so apropos that my esteemed colleagues are going to share some of their insights about how they've been able to navigate remote life.
Thanks, Makia. I'm Q Kang. I'm an associate consultant with La Piana, and I've been with the firm almost a year now, but I've been working remotely full-time for about 2.5 years.
I'm David La Piana, and the founder of the firm. I've been remotely working since 1998 in the founding, when we were kind of on the front edge of people working from home. I'll have more to say about that later.
I am Beverly Snow. I do communications and operations for the firm. I've been here for about a year now, and I've been working remotely for that year and a little bit of experience in my prior job for about 2 years.
And I think it's worth noting that two of us are in the East Coast time zone, and the other two, Beverly and David, are in Pacific in California. And so there's some, I think, benefits and maybe challenges when we think about scheduling and whatnot, where the hours overlap. But before I get to, I guess, the structural pieces and how you manage your time in that regard, can you tell me a little bit about your home office and how you've created your designated workspace? Are there particular, I guess, resources or things that you have to have at your disposal to really create an effective workspace? And so we'll start with you, David.
Yeah, so over the years, I have sort of narrowed it down to kind of the Marie Kondo of working at home, only the things that I love. And so I have a flat workspace desk, a laptop computer that is sometimes here on top of the desk, and sometimes I take it over to a chair to sit in, or sometimes I take it downstairs, or if the weather's nice, I take it outside. And then I have a Polycom phone, which I can use as either a regular phone or speakerphone that it runs on VoIP, so I don't actually have a landline. So it's all internet enabled, and a cell phone, and that's about it. I mean, I have a bunch of pens, but I don't use them very often. And so it's a very flexible workspace. So when I travel and I'm in a hotel, it's pretty much the same thing. I've got my cell phone and my laptop, and I'm sitting here.
And what's your setup in Richmond, Q?
I have what my fiance calls a battle station. And so I have a desk in the corner of our living room, actually. I have a convertible stander, which my laptop sits on top of. I have a monitor and one dedicated sort of mini bookcase where I keep all of my work-related things. And I try to do a really good job of designating that this is my workspace. I have a tiny rug that goes under the desk. I have one of those exercise balls to sit on, and I only sit on it when I'm working.
And what about you, Bev?
So as you might be able to tell, I live in a pretty small studio, so I have a workspace specific for work. It's very simple, minimalistic, but I have a monitor, my laptop, and then I have a wall calendar, like a dry erase wall calendar mounted on my wall in front of me, just to keep everything organized in check. But much like Q, I use my workspace for work, and I leave the other parts of my apartment for personal time. That way I'm like drawing that line of work and home life.
So that's an interesting theme that two of you touched on, about the delineation between, since your workspace is actually where you live, the delineation between how you structure your time so that you're able to pivot and balance between when you're doing work and helping clients and when you are living your best life. And so I'm wondering if you can give any other examples other than the actual demarcation. So Q talked about like the exercise ball and the rug. Bev talked about like, the corner of the studio where it's just like work designated space. I'm wondering if there's other things, maybe mentally and or behaviors that you've started to use so that you're able to be more binary in when it's work time versus playtime.
For most of the time that I've been working at home, I had kids at home which is no longer the case. And so I remember the first day I went to work at home, they were used to me leaving by the front door and they were going to go say bye-bye daddy as I was leaving, but I was at the back door because back then where we lived, I had an office in a little shack in the backyard. And so it was just very funny how, when I went out, I was like, okay, I'm going to work. And it was kind of unusual, but they got used to it. And they would never, they were like, I don't know, 5 and 8, and they would never come out there and bother me when I was in that office. And then when I started working in the house here, which my kid's older, my wife is around sometimes because she sometimes works from home. And so there's this needing to communicate easily, I can talk right now or I can't talk right now. And we both have signals to each other, which are mostly a closed door.
And what about for you, Q? How do you and your fiance, I guess, navigate your shared space when you are on Zoom call after Zoom call supporting the social sector?
I think that we've established some good indicators. He can tell when I'm working versus not. I think I'm very lucky that I have a work laptop, and I think so I've made a habit of only using my work laptop for work, and then I have a personal laptop which is actually a different color, so he can tell that if he walks in and I'm on my laptop, but I'm on my personal laptop, he knows that he's free to sort of chat and talk.
So I think it's telling that this, like, working from home and being remote almost places a premium on like the individuality and the independent nature of the work we're doing. So we're doing it in collaboration and in partnership with whoever's on the other side of our laptop or part of the Zoom call. But as far as like interaction with colleagues and staff, there's almost a barrier to maybe get over, whereas we were in the same office, we would just like pop over by the water cooler or share lunchtime together, etc. And so I'm wondering if you have any advice for individuals that have been maybe used to working in an office environment that have now, given the current circumstances, had to shift to working from home. Any advice for how to continue to nurture and develop those relationships with their colleagues while they can't actually be physically present with them?
I'll jump in on that one. My background is in education, so I went from working at a school surrounded by hundreds of kids and teachers and just really outgoing people. For me, it's been just really taking any opportunity to reach out to colleagues and just say, hey, just wanted to check in on you, and just like being obvious that you're switching from a work conversation to just a check-in, and that it's like kind of off the record, like, hey, how's life? Like, how are things? What'd you do this weekend? Really just still taking the time to have those conversations and get to know each other on that level, I think builds friendships, relationships, but it builds trust between one another. We use Teams here, and so utilizing that chat feature, I am not ashamed to send smiley faces and exclamation points because it's who I am. I feel like that communicates my personality. And so I use those things when appropriate. And I think just continuing to be yourself.
Great. And since you have the longest runway with working remotely, David, what are your thoughts on that last question about fostering relationships and connection while virtual?
Well, it's certainly gotten easier since video calling quality has improved so dramatically. The early days of Skype, it was very, herky-jerky kind of thing. And now it's really good. So we use Zoom almost all the time. And one recommendation I have for people who are now having to work at home, you might have a one-on-one call and you might decide, I'm going to do it by phone. Don't do it by phone, do it by video. And so we use it almost universally. Every call is set up so that we can see each other. And then as Bev says, check in with people. How are you doing? Don't just make it like an email, like, this is the business thing and we're done, but have it be a little less efficient. It's okay to be less efficient because working at home is inherently so much more efficient that it's okay to occasionally, let things slide a little bit so that you have relations with people.
Yeah, that actually reminds me, and you're reminding me that I need to reach out to my colleague, Laura, because we used to have these monthly video calls because we hadn't been on projects together for a while, just to check in and see how life was and, get an update on what's going on. And so I think that's another way to still have that investment in relationships when you're not able to physically go to someone's office or cubicle and engage with them. And yeah, the video calls do make a big difference, just because you can see, like, your herky-jerky movements when you're talking about Skype. You would miss that in a phone call.
Right.
Were you going to say something, Q?
I was going to add that for folks who are trying to connect with coworkers or clients that they are not familiar with, I think that there are still, I think we all went online virtually sort of unexpectedly. I know that there are people who are having to onboard to new organizations virtually, and it's all very strange. And the relationships can feel even harder because you don't know the person on the other end. And I think that one thing I found is being very honest and vulnerable right from the beginning goes a long way in terms of establishing a connection.
Yeah. I will add that in recent calls that Q and I have been on for projects, she has been starting us off with a breathing exercise just to ground folks, given that the anxiety of the moment is ratcheting up with each passing hour, it seems. And so I think there's also some opportunities to maybe rethink how meetings are facilitated and really check in with people to see how they are before you get back to the work of, whatever it is that's on your work plan. So I think my final question for you is, a number of people have had to shift really quickly to going to work from home or virtual environments that they may not be used to. What piece of wisdom or advice, based on your years of experience, would you offer to someone who might be new to this? Like, this might be a brave new world for them.
I would say, like, pretty simply, just find what works for you. Don't feel pressured to match the mold. Make a space that really meets your needs as a person, and just pay attention to your routines and pay attention to breaks that you might need. For me, sometimes, like David said too, I like to go outside and work, and that's okay because it works for me and it makes me more effective in my work.
So over the years, I have hired a lot of people who, for the vast majority of them, this is the first time they've worked from home full time, because this is a relatively new phenomenon. And what I found has been the biggest challenge for people is the thing that you guys talked about in the beginning of delineating personal space and personal time from workspace and time. And it can go off badly in two directions, of like working all the time and everywhere, or getting distracted constantly by, kids, dogs, friends, whatever, and not getting anything done. And so having that delineation be really clear in your space, I think, is great. Some people find it's helpful to dress differently, like to put on clothes like you're going to work, at least on top. We could take a poll here. How many of us are wearing shorts? Whatever it makes you feel professional, rather than just like you're chatting with friends, I think can be helpful.
I would just echo what Bev and David have shared. I'd say what's very helpful, I think, when you're first starting to work from home is learning to set your schedule. It's really important that you set up some sort of routines for yourself. I think people have heard before that work will expand to fill the amount of time that's available. So some things that can be helpful include, setting a 6 p.m. or a 5 p.m. yoga class, setting a midday sort of phone call with a friend, setting these sort of time markers for yourself that help indicate, now I'm working, now I'm not working, here's when I have to be done, helps a lot in terms of structuring your day.
The last thing I'll say is that it gets easier after you've done it for a few days, even a few weeks, if this lasts for a lot of people. You may decide, you know what, I want to ask my boss if I can just keep working from home because I really like this.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for sharing your insights about working from home. I think that some of the tidbits you offered are going to be really instructive for people that are trying to figure out how to navigate this new normal. I would also encourage folks to check out our website for additional resources and insights about the social sector writ large, as well as how folks are navigating in this current dynamic.